Well, once a year, the women of the church get a chance to conduct a service and reflect on matters of importance to them. This year, we are remembering two wonderful women who were part of a fellowship for many years and made considerable contributions to the well-being and running of our church. And they are Dorothy Snow and Joe McCoy, who were great friends and both passed away last year. In honoring them, we are also reminded of the many women who have preceded us in the organization now known as United Women in Faith, and to us still known as the UMW. An organization now 500,000 members strong had a humble beginning. In 1869, over 150 years ago, 8 women met in Boston, Massachusetts to hear a report from some missionaries returning from service in India. They learned with dismay that there were no schools for girls in India and also no medical treatment for women since men were not allowed to treat them. They decided to turn their dismay into action and formed the Methodist Women's Foreign Missionary Society. They began fundraising and within a few months had raised enough money to send a teacher, Isabella Thoburn, and a female doctor, Clara Swank, to India, where Isabella established a school starting with just 6 girls, and Clara a clinic. Both of those institutions have grown and are still active in serving the people of India to this day. Over the years, the organization thus begun has grown and changed in many ways, including in its name, but always it has maintained its main purpose, which is to advocate for justice, concentrating on the well-being of children, youth, women, and the disenfranchised. At every meeting, we collectively recite our purpose, and we say this: the organized unit of United Methodist Women shall be a community of women whose purpose is to know God and to experience freedom as whole persons through Jesus Christ, to develop a creative, supportive fellowship, and to expand concepts of mission through participation in the global ministries of the church. May this be our goal and our prayer in all we do. Amen. Mission support is a vital part of the Women in Faith ministry, and we are proud of the work being done within the US and globally in 130 countries. The projects vary from environmental issues, health concerns, education, disaster relief, prison reform, urban as well as rural concerns. With compassion and striving for justice, the work of the church is being done locally, nationally, and globally, with women leading the way. Both Dorothy and Joe have been recipients of the Mission Recognition Award, Dorothy in 2001 and Joe in 2005. Let me read a little from their letter of recommendation, and then we will have some words from friends who have some other personal memories they would like to share. This is what was stated in Dorothy's Recognition Sunday, the statement. It says, as has been our custom, we present the Mission Award to a person who has given immeasurably to the life of the church and to mission work here and abroad. We honor today a person who has given untold hours to these causes. Industrious and hardworking, a faithful and dutiful person, Dorothy Snow represents so much of what this congregation is about: a caring, loving group trying its best to follow and serve the Lord. For starters, if you enjoy our second service, the coffee hour, on a weekly basis, and if you enjoy the fellowship thereof, thank Dorothy, who has kept it going for years with the help of weekly volunteers. Seeing that the coffee and snacks are ready, often setting tables a day ahead to be sure we have this time together. Dorothy was chair of the United Methodist Women, and we looked up to her as leader. She has had many years of experience uniting us in devotions, business, and fellowship. serving the congregation and community in mission in any way that she can. In that capacity, she is in charge of the church kitchen and helps chair and work on the salad buffet, turkey dinners we used to have, and often at a moment's notice, the funeral and memorial luncheons. Much appreciated are her tireless efforts on numerous church committees, from administrative council, outreach, nominations, trustees, along with being the keeper of the memorial fund records. Dorothy is instrumental in the production of the church newsletter, which we used to have. On a personal note, you may spot her working at Snow's on order day, or curled up with a good book, or maybe sewing and stitching crafts for the church bazaar, all along with the duties of a mother of 6, grandmother of 11. She frequently flies off to help family members, and when not busy with all of this, she might be seen sorting coupons and rebating, taking a nature walk, or in front of her computer looking up things on the internet. We would be lost without our faithful friend and guide. And as Christ served his disciples by the washing of their feet, so too does Dorothy continue to give to those around her in the spirit of Christ. We honor and admire Dorothy for her giving spirit in the service of the Lord, and that is why we want to present her with a mission recognition. That was Dorothy. And now for Joe. Matthew 12:35 says, "A good person out of the good treasure of the heart brings forth good things." Is one of these good people that we would like to honor with a mission recognition award today. Yesterday was a very special day for a lady in our congregation. She had a milestone birthday. We won't tell you which one, but it's a good time to thank her for her many years of service for this church. As a faithful and loyal member of the United Methodist Women, Jo McCoy has been treasurer of the circle for many years. She used her musical talent singing in the choir as soprano section for nearly as long as we can remember. She has often been the backup person when Dorothy's gone to get the coffee hour going. And if you smell pine sol in the fellowship hall, you'll know that Jo McCoy is doing a super duper job of scrubbing the kitchen floor. Jo's compassion and concern for others materializes in her frequent visits and help to shut-ins and people in nursing homes. She remembers them with cards and letters and through the prayer chain. Jo contributes to her community by serving on the board as a volunteer at the Senior Center and as an active member of the Northwest Community Action Agency. In past years, she was also an active chamber member. As a devoted wife, she cared for Mac with much love in his final days, constantly caring for his needs and visiting him in the Tomahawk Nursing Home. But McCoy's devotion to this church has been ongoing as Mac served on the board and as an usher and in other capacities and committees over many years. Jo keeps active as time and health allows, keeping up with her 4 adult children and 7 grandchildren. She enjoys reading, walking, and talking with her friends. Jo continues to serve her Lord in this church and community. Proverbs 10:7 says, "Good people will be remembered as a blessing." Surely Jo McCoy is one of these. We honor you, Jo, and love you and wish you continued devotion to your Lord for many years to come. So now we can get to a little bit more updated versions of these testimonials. And Phyllis has been a longtime friend of both these ladies, and she was willing to come up and share some of her thoughts. So the microphone up there is yours, Phyllis.
Good morning.
Just a little closer, please.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah. Okay. You know, I've been looking back and remembering, Clarence and I came to Mercer in 1975. We had some cabins and we had a campground and we were very raw at it. And we kind of worked there and ignored the church, which was not a good thing. Many years later, in the early 2000s, as we were more relaxed, we came back into the church, and the first two people that welcomed us with open arms, without judgment, were Joe and Dorothy. They both immediately came over and welcomed us and were so happy to see us and were so kind. I will always remember that. And I also want to remember some personal things. Dorothy was the turkey dinner. Without Dorothy, the rest of us couldn't have done it, I'm sure. She was there for every step of the way, from letting us know the turkeys had arrived, turkeys were to be picked up, turkeys were back to be baked and brought back to church by 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, and we all did it. For many years, the Wallums helped. For many, many years, the Swifts helped, and for many years, we all helped. It was fun. We enjoyed it, and she was there from early morning to late night, never complaining. And Joel was always willing to help all the way. One of my memories of Jo is her smile, her friendliness, her sitting behind me in church and constantly saying, "I like the way your hair waves." And I also, and I've told this story before, but for the rest of you, after Clarence died, people were kind, and I'm very happy about that. But one day, about 3 weeks later, I went into the post office and came out, and Jo was just coming around the corner, and she stopped and she said, "I just need to give you one more hug." And it was probably the best hug I ever got. It was something that, people, when you lose a loved one, people remember you and they talk to you, and then they kind of expect you to go on your way. But Jo never expected me to go on my way. She expected me to feel sad, and she was there to hug me, and I will never forget it. These two ladies were Mercer United Methodist Church. They were always there in the background. Dorothy asked me to make the coffee one time for a funeral because Dorothy had been running back and forth to Minocqua because she was being treated for breast cancer. And she said, "You can do it." And I said, "Dorothy, I've never filled that big coffee pot." She said, "Slip this on the bulletin board down there. Don't forget to add salt." I did it. Jo showed up to help, and Dorothy came back from her treatment and marched right in and took over, and all went well, because I knew when Dorothy Snow and Joe McCoy were there in the background for anything, you knew it always went smoothly. They were two great ladies. I loved them both. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Phyllis. And Judy Wilson?
Dick and I first met Joe and Mac McCoy when we moved here to Mercer, and they ran the resort. And Dick was, of course, on the fire department, and got into the ambulance, and the auxiliary in the fire department always had an annual picnic at McCoy's resort, which was a great place. And Joe was always so welcoming, and Mac too. And then, of course, when we moved here, we joined this church, and it was wonderful to find them as members and greeting us when we came into the church. And when we bought the restaurant, I believe that Joe had moved into the little house between us and the post office by then. And she would always come over on St. Patrick's Day and have corned beef and cabbage. And the first year I was there, I told her I was looking for recipes for making Irish soda bread. The next thing I knew, I had 2 different recipes for Irish soda bread to make for the restaurant. And of course, I still have them, and they're in her own handwriting. They're not typed up like normal people do anymore, or taken off the internet. And I still use them. Now I make my Irish soda bread down in Texas for our St. Patty's Day potluck down there. But it was great. She was just the most wonderful person. And Dorothy is the person that got me really involved into the church, the inner workings, the ad council, working in the kitchen. Dorothy was a to-go person. All I can remember is her, if you felt her coming up behind you and putting her hand on your shoulder, you knew you were going to have another job. There was no if, but, or maybe about it. You can do it, she would say. And I remember going into Snow's, and there's Dorothy on her knees, putting merchandise on shelves or removing it. And I thought, she can, and she was still doing it, not as much, but up to the last couple of years that she was with us, she just needed to be doing something. She couldn't just sit. And the other memory I have of the 2 of them together, Dorothy and Joe, I could look out my kitchen door at the restaurant and, of course, see Josephine's house. And when Dorothy was still driving, her car would pull up to Joe's back door or front door, whichever you want to call it. That's the one she went in and out. And in Joe would get, and off they'd go. Whatever they were up to, they were together. They were just the greatest friends. They really, really were. I'll miss them both. And I'm just sorry that I wasn't here in the winter or at the time of the years when they passed. I'll miss them.
Well, I misunderstood. I thought I was supposed to give a 20-minute sermon, so bear with me.
No, Martha.
Today we're celebrating the lives of 2 women who symbolize what it is to love. And I too have the memories of Dorothy. Every time I came in, she was making the coffee. And I think of her as the Martha of the Bible. But one of my really special memories of Dorothy was years and years ago, she gave a sermon for whoever was missing. It might have been back when Irv was the minister. And she held up this paper and she gave us a minute to think about what it was. And then she explained that it's a round to it, okay? And she went on to describe the tendency that we all have when it comes to doing things. We're gonna do it when we get around to it. So maybe we'll give that friend that we haven't talked to for many years a call when I find the round to it. Or maybe I'll go on that mission trip that I was always hoping and wishing that I could do when I find a round to it. Well, these round to it's are very rare. So don't wait to find a round to it. Just go do it. And so that's a really special memory I have of Dorothy. And don't tell Irv this, but I don't remember every sermon I heard. But I remember Dorothy's sermon from so many years ago. So thank you, Dorothy, for your inspiration and the example that you set with your life. I can't hardly tell this story about Jo without giggling. Jo one day, some of my memories are more recent than Phyllis's and Julie's, but one day while Jo was in Milestone, she and a friend decided to go up to the local bar and just have a hamburger. Maybe they were tired of Milestone food, I don't know what it was, but just picture this. Here's Highway 51 with all the traffic, and here's Jo and her friend with their walkers walking up Highway 51 to the bar for the hamburger, okay? So, they're not walking like this. No, I'm sure they're walking like this. And anyway, they got to the bar. And first of all, there were some steps going up to the bar, which, formed a sort of barrier for them. And then they realized they didn't bring their wallets. They didn't bring any money. So how are they going to get this hamburger? So Jo decided to give up, and off she went with her walker back down the highway to Milestone. And I think, if I remember the story correctly, which I might not, that her friend actually stayed and talked him into giving her a hamburger. Seriously, these two women's lives are an inspiration to me. Their spirit for living was matched by their spirit for giving. They were gracious, loving women, and their memories live on in us. Lives well lived are a tribute to us all. And Dorothy and Jo have touched us and everyone around them with their love. Thank you, God, for sending them to us.
Thank you, Martha. And Irv, you have the last word.
I'm going to give all of you who forget the sermon within a week to say that I seldom remember the sermon that I preached a couple of times a week ago, so it's very common. I've had the blessing of meeting both of these people at an age when many persons have already begun to slow down considerably. And I can say to you with all honesty that neither one of these persons slowed down until their death. They were just remarkable people. I was reminded of a song that John Prine had written a number of years ago. He was a prolific writer, and he wrote this song about a couple, and in it there's this refrain that says, old trees get stronger, rivers become wider, and as people get older, they become lonely and ask for someone to say hello in there. It's a song called Hello in There. Well, I think he never met Jo or Dorothy. These were two incredibly alive and vibrant and engaged people. They were persons who clearly loved conversation, they loved activity. I can still see Dorothy sitting in the back row. When I first came here, she was there every Sunday. And sometime, even when the snow began to come, she would walk from her house, which is a fairly good hike, and sit there in that pew and then come down for coffee and then head home, or someone would drop her off at her house. I got to meet Jo in Milestone assisted living. And the first time I went to visit her, I had to ask for help to find the room. And then having gone through some of the corridors, I said, now, perhaps someone could guide me out of here because I'm not sure how to get out. And Dorothy said, Joe said, don't worry, I will get you out. So she grabbed me by the arm and dragged me out. And she literally paced the distance by stepping really fast. She was just full of energy. I recall also when she was not doing well, but nevertheless could receive a visitor over in Rhinelander, and I stopped to see her. And it was the St. Patrick's Day, and I said, I hope they're going to give you a little bit of that green beer. She said, oh, I hope they give me 2. She was such a wonderful lady, and with such vibrance and love for her family, for her grandchildren, love for her community, and love for the activities within the senior center. Marie Baling, who is a member of our church, is in Park Falls, and she always asked me when I'm there, how is Joe? And she was quite sad when I told her that Joe had died. Now, Joe and Dorothy their spirits are together. That is something they were both convinced of, that God was a loving God, a gracious God, and would in fact receive them into his heavenly kingdom. So we can offer thanks and praise for the deep faith they had. Remember that it was Paul who often referred to the women who were instrumental in the beginning of the early Christian church and referred to them as saints and fellow apostles. These 2 women were indeed saints of our church and were faithful in their service and in their commitment to their Lord. For that, I am grateful. For that, we can be grateful.
Thank you, Irv. In order to show our gratitude to God for all the blessings we have, we will now have our offering.